political injustices and a lot of resistance and fights and struggles. In New York, we got together people from Brooklyn, from Queens, from Connecticut, from Boston, from different ages between 24 to 65, different backgrounds, different reasons why we're here, different political experiences, different social movement experiences, and different languages as well. Beside Spanish and English, people from the communities in Guatemala who spoke different languages and with very different realities, but together for the same reason. The burning point was the corruption scandal. But this movement goes beyond that. That's the result of decades of discontent of how things have been managed in Guatemala. As I was saying, it would be very difficult to make a short version of the political history of Guatemala. But in New York, at least, we have two starting points. After April 25th, when it was the first big movement in Guatemala, looking at that, it was so emotional for all of us being here. It was the first time in years, maybe in decades, in which we were able to see the park like that. Some of us had memories of what we have been told about the revolution, the 1944 revolution, about different social movements, the students, the teachers. And some of us have participated in some of these movements in Guatemala, but never like this. This was something, and this was inspiring. So after all that, after looking at all that, and also after feeling very upset about this huge corruption scandal, some of us decided to do something from here too. The first two events were very naive. We were two people in Washington Square Park, and then a couple of elder people joined us, so we were four. We had balloons, we had signs. It was very, very innocent. And the next weekend, another group of four, again, went to the Guatemalan consulate. And we were not thinking about having our own revolution here. We knew that there was something going on in Guatemala that we wanted to be part of, but that we were here. But after that, something happened, and the social media did its part. Somehow, we ended up having a huge group of Guatemalans via Facebook saying, hey, what are we going to do? We have to do something. And we didn't know each other. We had no idea who we were talking to. We had some references, like someone invited the other person to the group and so, but we were lost in that. And through Facebook, through social media, we organized the first big event, which was on May 30th, like 1 month after the first big event in Guatemala. And that day in Washington Square Park, we got to recognize each other. We were like, hey, oh, hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this together. It was very emotional, it was very nice. But it goes beyond that. We want to do more. So this was the first day in Washington Square Park. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and just us. And well, there was a dog convention, so it was packed with people with dogs. You know, New Yorkers love dogs. So we used that. I didn't want to put that picture because it's a little bit embarrassing, but there were thousands of people with dogs. So we got behind them with our signs, trying to make it look bigger. We wanted to say that we were there, like, representing Guatemala. And then the other event was the four who went to the Guatemalan consulate, and they also went to Times Square with their signs. And then we did the May 30th, Renuncia Ya, New York City. We decided to join and to follow everything that was happening in Guatemala. We add them to our Facebook group, And we were like tracking them. Like everything they did and everything they said, we were doing the same thing from New York. We were trying to replicate their effort. And it worked. Suddenly, we had more and more and more people. And in Guatemala, they knew about us too. And it was not only New York. It happened in Paris. It happened in Mexico. It happened also in San Francisco, Los Angeles. It happened everywhere. Sometimes 2, sometimes 5, sometimes 20. But we were telling the world that we care and that this is not new. It happened after a corruption scandal, but we have been fighting for Guatemala from our side, from art, from education, from different perspectives since ever. So we joined the Renuncia Ya movement in Guatemala, Justicia Ya, and Otra Guatemala Ya. 3 different groups fighting for the same things. We were asking for the resignation of the president and the vice president. We were demanding the continuity of the investigations and the trials. We were asking for the suspension of the elections. As you know, we just recently had elections, and we didn't want it to happen. We were saying, we are not ready to choose another president. We don't have candidates. We don't have the conditions to decide the future of Guatemala with this big mess. We need to clean the house first. Unfortunately, from our demands, that was the only one which didn't happen. We got, and by we, I said like we, entitled the people from Guatemala. We got to make the vice president resign, and then the president. And the CICIG is still doing the investigations. They're doing an amazing job. It's because of them also that all this happened. And we were also demanding reforms to the electoral system. It's not working, and we have the proofs of that by now. It's not working, and until we change that, nothing else is going to change. Now, on Sunday, we have elections again with 2 candidates that are not ready, despite any political postures. They're just not prepared to be the president of our country. And we were also asking for a general assembly involving the people, making the people count. Ask the people, as they were saying before, ask the people what they want, how they want, because we have been in silence from years and years and decades. May 30th was our big first rally. Most of us, except from a few who knew each other from Guatemala and other social movements, most of us met that day, and it was beautiful. Here are the pictures of the first day. Oh, something happened. Wow, it's not even show the pictures. I can show it to you later. I will assume that the first 2 events that we did with our 4 people were more on the poetic and the nostalgic side. Common citizens trying to challenge the fact that we are away. We brought balloons and signs, and an elderly couple joined us, and there were, well, what I was telling you, the dog convention. It was silly, it was naive. But for the second event, we were 75 people that in New York takes a lot to take together. And it was the chance of making something big, of recognizing that the nostalgia of one person was also the nostalgia of much more people. That the desire of doing something concrete, a specific action to change our reality was a common dream. That it was as painful and as difficult to be so far away, but that we could do something. It took us a lot of determination to work together, despite our different backgrounds, beliefs, and even political postures and culture. It wasn't easy, but nothing compares to the big picture of what happened in Guatemala for the last 5 months. They were doing the hard job, and they were our inspiration. These events since April 25th have been a big lesson to a country that has been forced through violence, through poverty, and an absurd and corrupted and offensive politics and politicians to remain silent and inactive. We have been forced to that. And this event made us wake up. Not anymore. And in New York, we want to support that. And that's how Florecerás Guatemala was born. We just celebrated this past Tuesday 71 years of our revolution in 1944. It is unbelievable that most of the leaders from that movement are dead, not because they will be like 90 or 100 years old now, but because they were killed. And they keep killing the leaders. They keep killing the young people. They keep thinking that the youth is the enemy, that they're gangs, that they're doing the social cleaning. They're killing the leaders in the communities who are fighting for their lands, for our lands. And that is still happening since the revolution of 1944 and before. The next generation after the revolution is all the people who were our teachers, who now they're like 60, 75, 80 years old. They already did their job, and they did a great job being leaders. They also were disappeared or sent to exile. They participated directly or indirectly in the Civil War, and they have been persecuted and silenced fighting for the same things that the following generations have been fighting for, and that we're still fighting for: justice, equality, and wellness for every person in Guatemala, everyone. It is a matter of dignity for women, for the indigenous community, for children, for workers, students, artists, farmers, everyone. We just want dignity and social justice. The hope of this big movement is that we realize that we still have common dreams. Maybe our approaches are different, but we share the same dreams, and that we can figure out different ways of doing things. In a violent society, responding with peace and with peaceful movements is the most revolutionary act. And this is what happened in Guatemala. Since April 25th, and that's why people who are far away are grateful for. That's why we're grateful for. One of the most, every single rally in Guatemala was peaceful. We have been threatened since ever in Guatemala, just for resisting. And during this movement, no one responded with violence. Not even when they had the police close to them. Not even when they were being threatened seriously. No one responded with violence. They responded with creativity, with art. The day that the Congress had to decide if they were going to retire the antejuicio. How do you say antejuicio? It's like whether or not he has immunity. Yeah. So they were deciding if he will keep or not his immunity. That day, it was one of the most beautiful events that happens. The police came, and there was another movement trying to block the entrance of the congressmen and women to the Congress. And instead of responding with violence, what people did was like a human barrier to let them in. And after that, a group of young people, a group of the movement, they brought flowers, white roses, and water to hand out to the people who were blocking the entrance and that were convinced by them. Instead of responding with violence, they were grateful. They said, hey, do you understand why we're doing this? They talked to the people. And after they retired, they gave them a rose or water. They were feeding the police. The police has always been the enemy, since ever. We hate the police because they are used to threaten social movements. And in these situations, they were our allies. The movement was feeding the police. They were joining them during the night, saying, "Thank you for your hard work." And that is revolutionary. But, I mean, in New York, we can do our part too. Not only in New York, in the area, in the United States. There are more than 3 million Guatemalans in the United States. And we count as well. We knew from the beginning that we were not going to make any difference in the demands that we're doing after these rallies, continuous rallies, Saturday after Saturday. But we knew that we were going to make this visible, that we were going to get organized and look at each other's faces and recognize that we shared the same impulse of doing something. And we did it in a way. We're doing it. We are going to continue working together. Florecerás Guatemala is going to keep working together. On October 25th, this Sunday, we will have an entire day of workshops and a meeting to make a plan. Now we want to make a plan of how to continue doing something. Put our dreams on the table and figure out a way of making it happen. So far, we know that we need to be educated and to educate. We need to share our stories between us and between other people, like with events like this and more. We need to show documentaries. We need to read books, to have discussions. We need to ask the people what they know about Guatemalan history and to share our information and put it on the table. Because one of the biggest problems is that the people don't know what happened in Guatemala. People are blind, no matter the social status. They have been trying to silence the history of Guatemala. We also need to be visible from the outside, and New York is a perfect spot for that. We count, and having the right to vote is one of our demands, and we are gonna get organized to make that happen. We live here also, so internal politics are our concern as well. We know that there's a lot to do, but we started spreading the seed of hope, and we know that Guatemala will flourish. We are absolutely certain about that. That's why the name of Guatemala, Florecerás Guatemala. We don't know where that came from. It's something that has been used in the rallies in Guatemala, and we use it as our theme during the 5 rallies that we did in Guatemala, in New York. We went to Washington Square Park, the Guatemalan consulate, and the last 2 were in Union Square. During the last one, we spread out a big carpet, paper carpet, where people sign and they send messages. And that, on the personal side, I couldn't handle it anymore of being in New York without participating directly in Guatemala. And I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to just take a plane and fly back to Guatemala and say, here I am. And I brought that carpet. And I gave it to the movement Otra Guatemala Ya. And I was invited to participate in one of their meetings. And they received the message from New York. They understood that we care. And it's not only us, it's everyone. It's a lot of people beyond and outside Guatemala. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. And thank you, Giancarlos. I'm going to start things off here, but if I invite anyone in the audience to jump in, and because this is live streaming for people who can't come tonight, people who live outside the city, if you'd like to say something or ask a question, please come up to this microphone so that the camera can see you, because there are many, many more people participating in this event than just the people here in the room. You know, both of you have touched on something really important, which is that there's a vibrant movement both in the rural areas and the departamentos in the outlying states in Guatemala, and a vibrant movement in the city. And there's a willingness to try to connect these two movements. I'm sure both of you, being part of these movements, have thought about that. And I wonder if you could share with us some of your thoughts about how these movements can be connected.
Muy bien, yo creo que se han dado ya ciertas señales de unidad.
So I think that there's already been certain signals that unity is happening,
En el cual se puede mostrar y se deja ver la presencia de las organizaciones populares en el área rural. En el área rural y que de alguna manera también el área urbana reaccionó ante todo este desfalco que estaba sucediendo con el alto índice de corrupción.
and so both the folks in rural areas and also in urban areas reacted when we saw these high levels of corruption that were happening.
Entonces esto nos permite poder analizar de que sí es posible hacer una unión de fuerzas velando sobre todo por los intereses de nuestro pueblo.
And so this gives us the idea that unity is possible, particularly when we're all looking for the well-being of our people.
Y no solamente a nivel de allá de Guatemala, sino que también ya se vio la iniciativa de que se han tomado las personas que viven fuera de nuestra Guatemala.
And also not just in Guatemala, we've seen the initiative that people living outside of Guatemala have taken.
Y que también los medios de comunicación nos hicieron llegar la noticia de que muchos conciudadanos que estaban en otros países pues también se unieron a esta manifestación.
And we saw in mass media in Guatemala that there were lots of people from other countries who were united in our movement in Guatemala.
Entonces creemos de que estemos donde estemos, pues podemos ejercer nuestra soberanía que nos la garantiza la Constitución.
And so it shows us that wherever we are, we can exercise the sovereignty that we're granted under the Constitution.
Que el pueblo unido puede mantener el control sobre las autoridades que están de turno.
That population united can take to task our elected officials.
Gracias.
Yeah, I think it happened in a way. These movements started in the city, but it was replicated also in the inside of Guatemala. And also we were talking before that it opened the eyes to a lot of people who were never aware of the reality beyond their convenience, because they have been trying to silence the people. So this movement made the youth, made all the participants of the movement realize that there is something else going on, that there are people fighting for our land, that there are people fighting for better salaries, that there are people fighting for justice, that there has been a trial for genocide. Most of the people don't even know that or don't want to know about it. And these events made us realize that, and that connection between the city and the other places in Guatemala started to happen. Usually when the communities had rallies, like with other demands, it's more like a complaint in the city. Oh, we're gonna have a lot of traffic. There they are again, complaining. They don't want anything. They're frustrated. They're poor. Like all these horrible statements. And this time, when the communities came to the city, they supported them. For the first time, I mean, they have always had supporters, but now it was massive. So that connection is happening, and hopefully it's going to continue after whatever happens on Sunday. It's going to continue. There's no turning point. Now Guatemala had a big event, and we have to take it from there. We can't go back now.
You know, Ellen, I was wondering if you would tell us the story about the 4 young social messaging people who were running the Facebook and Twitter for Renuncia Ya the campaign to get Otto Pérez Molina to resign, because I thought it was really illuminating.
Sure. What happened was a journalist came to cover the elections, to cover the Renuncia Ya movement, and she was able to get in touch with basically these 4 young people who were the ones who started Renuncia Ya from the social media movement of Renuncia Ya from their different points all over the capital city. And so she was asking them about why and how, and it came out that these people, were woken up by the corruption scandal, and that it wasn't something, they weren't people who'd ever gone to protest before, they weren't people who knew about the history of Guatemala in terms of the Civil War, the genocide that took place. They were people who told her that ahead of time they didn't even know that there was a genocide. And that it was when they went to the Central Park in Guatemala City and they saw the banners that talked about Tito or Genocida, that they started to ask questions, like who's Tito, which is Otto Pérez Molina's nickname or his name when
His war name.
His war name. And so they started to ask questions about what these banners were about, and started to ask questions about what else had been hidden from them, what else hadn't been taught to them in school, and started to really question everything. And the journalist also asked them, were you following the genocide trial? Did you go out and protest in the street when they annulled the genocide verdict? And they said no, but now we might. And so for them, it was a moment that started because of corruption, but that really seemed like it set off something that could be much larger for those 4 people, and also certainly probably for lots of other young people who came to the Central Park maybe for the first time in their lives, and had an awakening.
We know that to really make any kind of significant change, it takes a lifelong commitment to the struggle and to understanding what's going on around us and how we can contribute with our part. And I know that the resistance to the extractive industries has been a very long one. And because of that, I wonder, Giancarlos, if you can share with us some of the things that have kept you going and that you think could be great lessons for people, especially young people, just getting involved in the anti-corruption movement.
Los jóvenes que empezaron ahorita con Renuncia Ya, ¿qué es lo que les contaría? ¿Qué es lo que se puede enseñar? Unas lecciones sobre cómo mantener la lucha larga.
Afortunadamente, dentro de las organizaciones de resistencia con lo que es en contra de las empresas mineras, hay muchos jóvenes involucrados.
So luckily, within the anti-extractive, anti-mining movements, there's many youth who are involved.
Ya que desde la iglesia pues se motiva a mantener este tipo de resistencia de manera pacífica, ya que es un derecho que nosotros tenemos y que lo podemos ejercer con libertad también.
And this is something that the Catholic Church has really promoted, and obviously promoted a peaceful struggle, because we know it's our right to peacefully resist.
Yo creo que es de hacer conciencia también a toda la juventud, porque sabemos de que las redes sociales, los medios, pues son positivos cuando se les da un uso que en realidad sea de beneficio también para la mejor construcción de una mejor sociedad.
And so we want to encourage youth to continue to be informed, and it's great when they can use social media and other social media tools in a positive way in order to build a better society.
Y fuera buenísimo crear un solo bloque que busque construir un mundo mejor.
And it would be great to have a solid block to build a better world.
Lamentablemente el tema de medio ambiente, de nuestros recursos naturales, pues se nos da muy poca información.
Unfortunately, as related to like environmental issues or natural resource issues, we have very little information.
Entonces creemos de que la concientización a la juventud sería fundamental para que todos conozcamos las amenazas de este tipo de empresas en nuestro territorio.
And so we think that educating youth is really important so that we all understand the threat that these extractive industries are placing on our territory.
y de esta manera pues lograr de que muchos jóvenes y muchas personas puedan unirse para crear un solo bloque y lograr que en realidad mantener una resistencia bastante fuerte y sólida con un mismo objetivo.
And so in this way, we can have youth and everyone coming together to form a united and solid resistance with one objective.
I'd like to ask both of you before we open it up for any questions or comments. I'd just like to ask you what you see as the possibility for real change and improved democracy in Guatemala, because there's this moment and there's this opportunity, and I know you want to take advantage of it.
Well, I think we have two perspectives. One is through law. We need to make our law system effective, and we need to make some real changes in the law. And also, like the trials, the example of the trials for genocide, for corruption, people are going to take the law seriously right now. We have to make the law work. And the other one for me is leadership. I have been telling a lot of my colleagues and friends in Guatemala that I know among us, and that's in the city and also inside the city, a lot of people that are real leaders. But we have been trying to make the change from behind, because we have been proven that it doesn't work inside the system, the political system. But it's time to change that. We don't have great candidates to be presidents, to be on the Congress. So we need to change that. And maybe a way of changing that is occupying those places. We need to start feeling empowered and make the changes from the inside. The background activities, the social movements are very important. They're essential for every country. The art is essential for every country. Education is essential. But we also need to be more active and participate in politics to make a change.
Thank you.
Desde mi punto de vista, yo considero que el cambio a la ley electoral y de partidos políticos es fundamental.
I believe that changing electoral law and the laws that determine how political parties are managed must be changed. This is fundamentally important.
Para que los líderes de las comunidades, el pueblo en sí, pueda tener acceso también a participar dentro del campo de la política.
So that community leaders, the communities themselves, have the opportunity to participate in politics.
Porque hasta hoy podemos ver como que solo un determinado grupo tiene ese derecho de participar.
Because today it's just one small group has the right, the possibility to participate.
Entonces eso les da la facultad de poder mantener el poder.
So this gives them the opportunity, the capacity to maintain power.
Y también no hacer valer el derecho de los más pobres.
And not uphold the rights of the poorest.
Creo que ese sería algo fundamental allá en Guatemala.
I think this would be fundamental in Guatemala.
De darle la oportunidad de irse empoderando también las comunidades.
For communities to be able to be empowered.
Y de esa manera poder crear políticas locales también que vayan en beneficio y en desarrollo en la educación, la salud y la participación ciudadana como guatemaltecos.
And to create local political movements that benefit the population in relation to healthcare, to education, to social development.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. Well, we've put out a lot of information there, and I'd love to hear comments from any of you or questions. Yeah, and can you come up here to speak so our video viewers can see you? And tell us your name.
Lisa Vives. Lisa Vives. Mucho gusto a ustedes.
Igualmente.
Does everybody here speak Spanish? Okay, so,
Say it in English, I'll just translate.
okay. 40 years ago, there was a terrible terremoto, earthquake in Guatemala. So I was there, and when I returned to New York, I was very moved by everything I saw there, especially the pobreza and houses destroyed and people with no future. And when I came back, I had the wonderful fortune to meet Guatemalans here who were hoping to do something. And they formed a movement, a group, an organization called the Committee in Solidarity with the People of Guatemala. And we met all the time, we made calendars, we hosted guests from there, and it was wonderful, wonderful. But, you know, as with many things, there's a point where you get tired or frustrated. So the committee is not functioning, although NISGUA is functioning, and I'm happy about that. But there are many old Guatemalans, old Americans here in New York who still feel something and maybe can contribute something because they were there and they felt for Guatemala. So in my case, in fact, I have many books and posters, and I'm thinking maybe it's time to throw them because there's nobody here. But now that I've met you, and you made a great presentation, you both made a great presentation, so I hope to turn over some of my materials. And I also want to say, because these days I write about Africa, and the matter of extractive industries is a big story concerning Africa. But even here, even in America, there was just a movie by Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything. And she showed the people who are struggling against these extractive industries. I think it would be so valuable for all of the people struggling to share information. You know, how can we stand up? There was some incredible shots of indigenous people, la gente indígena de Canada, the United States, how they were fighting. And I don't know, maybe you've started this already, but I think it would be a great thing to put your resources together.
I'm sure that you're always thinking about that, about how you can unite against extractive industries throughout North and South America, as well as the rest of the world.
And then the last thing, I just had a question about Inco. I think that was the name of the nickel mine in Guatemala. And isn't that?
Where?
In Guatemala?
Yeah.
Yeah, a mine for nickel. Is it still operating? Is it polluting the land or the water? Could you talk about that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The nickel mine, the name you know has changed many times. It's turned over. It's been bought and sold by a number of different companies. But the company you may have heard of the most is Hudbay. Hudbay is a Canadian company that was operating the nickel mine. It's in El Estor in Izabal, Guatemala, a number of years ago. And there were some protests, and the private security shot and killed a community leader. And the wife of that community leader was able to file a civil case against the company in Canada. And so that's ongoing. Right now, it was a really important sort of step in being able to have responsibility for a Canadian company's actions abroad and have that be heard in Canada. And so that case is moving forward. But in the meantime, the company is still changed hands again and is extracting nickel.
Yes, other comments, other questions? Please come forward. Come forward. Oh, come forward and sit in the front. Then you can come right up to the microphone. Hello, Nancy Lawrence. Please.
Yeah.
Tell us your name.
Hello, my name is Morena. She is Lou. I'm gonna speak for her because she's in a treatment. She can talk right now, but she has a question. And for both, I think. And the question is, can I tell in Spanish and
Sure.
todo apunta a que el pueblo de Guatemala va a elegir a un presidente o presidenta en los siguientes días. Pero después de estas elecciones, ¿cuáles son los objetivos de renuncia ya? ¿Y cómo le van a dar seguimiento a este movimiento?
You should translate into English, yeah.
So in the next few days, that's okay. In the next few days, it seems as though Guatemala will be electing a new president. It's the runoff election on Sunday. And so what are the objectives? What are the plans for Renuncia Ya moving forward with a new president?
Yeah, so actually that's one of the things that in a way debilitated the movement a little bit because there was a different opinion about the elections. A big group was demanding not to have elections, as I said before. And we were pushing to it, but we didn't push too much, or the conditions didn't allow us to stop the elections.
And
then,
not everybody agreed with that tactic.
exactly. And on the other side, a big group was agreed to have the elections. There was a fear about losing democracy if we suspended the elections. And so we had the elections, and now the two candidates that we're about to elect, it's a very painful and frustrating event after all this that happened, that we're going back in history and saying okay, yeah, whatever, this is bad and this is worst. But it's serious. I mean, I know it sounds like a joke, and I'm putting it like a joke, but it's serious. One of the candidates, the military is behind him, and that's scary. We can't allow that to happen. And if he is elected, we will need to get organized and do something about it. And on the other side, Sandra Torres, she has corruption scandals behind her political background too. She's linked to very dangerous people in Guatemala. So it's not an option. So we have to keep fighting, and we have to make a deal among the movement of how we're going to face this, because this is dividing the movement. We don't know how to approach this situation, but I'm sure we're going to figure it out. We have to.
Well, yeah, we should let Jan Carlos answer too. Did you have another question then?
No, it's the comment from the same, but it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to add some comment, and I'm from Guatemala too. She also is from Guatemala. And I was in the movements as a journalist, photographer, and that makes me all the remembers in the that manifestations happen. And to make another comment, is the people is the young people is growing up in different groups also, and there is another new ones then they want to continue as an activist, as an activist, political, and a different ways to expression, and we are looking for that feedback also in a different ways. So I just want to add this for this.
Thank you.
Ampli community.
Thank you.
Yo creo de que el momento que se está viviendo tal vez no es el momento propicio para que se llevaran a cabo las elecciones.
So I think that the moment that we were living through wasn't necessarily the most appropriate, wasn't the best moment to have elections.
Pero lamentablemente lo que la Constitución pide o establece, pues se había llegado al momento en que había que elegir nuevas autoridades.
But unfortunately, based on the Constitution, it was the moment. It was when we had to elect new authorities.
Pero con la presencia y el despertar del pueblo,
But with the increased consciousness and the way that people had woken up,
creo que el próximo gobernante, independientemente quién sea, pues va a tener que trabajar también fuertemente en beneficio del pueblo.
I think that the next person who is elected, given everything that's happened, is going to be forced to work in benefit of the people.
Por el momento puede ser de que el movimiento Renuncia Ya pues esté un poco esperando la elección.
And so it could be that the Renuncia Ya movement is waiting to see what happens with the elections.
Pero también está la expectativa de qué es lo que en realidad va a hacer y va a proponer el nuevo gobierno.
And they're waiting to see what this new government will propose, what this new government will do.
Thank you. You had a question, and then Nancy. Yeah.
Hi, hola compañero, and hello comrades. My name is Leanne, and I organize with the New York Committee of Human Rights in the Philippines. At first, we want to say thank you so much for coming, Ian, from Guatemala, and from the Philippines to New York City. We really show our solidarity with you, coming from the Global South. In the Philippines, we also have similar conditions like in Guatemala. There is a lot of mining corporations coming from the US because of the need for US imperialism to extract resources. And most of the communities that are being threatened and shut down and intimidated, and recently 3 of our leaders being killed, are indigenous communities as well. And so I just really want to show appreciation for speaking, and hopefully we can exchange contacts so that we can build a stronger resistance and a network. And so my question is that similar to Guatemala and the Philippines, there has been a long history of colonization, and like you said, a long history of people coming up and really fighting for democracy, but there has been also years and years of resistance. And so kind of flipping it, besides the elections, I wanted to ask about what is the current state of Guatemala's resistance with armed struggle outside of political elections, because I've known that a lot of folks, there was a lot of great history coming from the guerrillas in Guatemala. Thank you.
Thank you.
Si hay una resistencia armada en Guatemala actualmente, que sabe que muchos grandes cambios pasaron durante, muchos líderes, muchas cosas importantes pasaron durante la lucha armada en Guatemala, y cuál es el estado de la lucha armada en Guatemala ahorita.
Bueno, yo creo que esa aparentemente es algo que quedó en el pasado, que no trajo un beneficio el encontrarse grupos armados.
And so it seems that is something that we left in the past, that it wasn't beneficial to have an armed confrontation between 2 sides.
Estamos conscientes de esa lamentable y triste realidad que se vivió con el derramamiento de sangre de muchas personas inocentes.
And so we're aware of the sad, unfortunate, sad history that occurred in which many innocent people were killed.
Y creemos de que no es la forma para buscarle una solución a los diferentes problemas que está viviendo Guatemala.
And we don't think that's a solution to the many problems that we're living with in Guatemala.
Como resistentes a las empresas extractivas de minería, no compartimos esa idea. Creeremos hacerlo pacíficamente para no violentar también el orden constitucional.
And so as people who are resisting mega projects, we believe in a peaceful struggle as the best struggle, and as not to also violate the Constitution.
Y gracias también por solidarizarse con nosotros de Filipinas también.
So thank you for your solidarity from the Philippines.
De alguna manera, pues también nos unimos a la lucha que ustedes como pueblo seguramente están haciendo también allá en sus tierras.
And so we also are in solidarity with the struggle that you're certainly carrying out in the Philippines.
Yo creo que eso es fundamental para que también estas empresas vean de que en ningún espacio de nuestra tierra pues tienen ese derecho de llegar a violentar y a también de alguna manera y respetar los derechos fundamentales de las personas.
So I think it's important that the companies know that there's nowhere on earth that they can come in and disrespect and violate the rights of the people.
You know, I've talked to a lot of people about this in Guatemala too, and you know, one of the things that Giancarlos hit upon, which is a very scary reality, is they feel that they have to have peaceful resistance, that is the only way to go, especially because the state is criminalizing activists, and they're trying to take them out of commission by bringing fraudulent criminal charges against them. So when they have to fight the criminal charges, then it takes them out of action. It requires a lot of resources from the movement and from themselves, and takes a really big personal toll. So this sticking to the idea of peaceful resistance has been really central to this particular moment in Guatemalan history. Yeah. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, just to add that the peace treaty was signed in 1996. So apparently the war was ended, but the war practices continue. Just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a community leader was killed, and that happens very often. They kill the young people, they kill the community leaders. The women are still being violated. So the war practices are still going on. And how come the youth and the gangs are armed? They have to take these arms from somewhere. And then we have drug dealers and corruption and military. It's a big picture. And it hasn't ended, although we are a democracy and in peace right now. That is just not true. But we don't want, at least, well, I'm going to speak for myself. I don't want to go through a war again. We already lost enough people in our war. It can't happen again.
I see your hand back there, but there's one other person before you. And then when you come up and speak in the microphone, okay? Nancy.
Well, first of all, thank you, all of you. And thank you, Pam, because you talked about, you know, a lifelong commitment, and you've certainly dedicated many, many years to Guatemala solidarity work and human rights work. Yes, I did live in Guatemala for many years, and was there at the earthquake that Lisa referred to, and worked many years with the Guatemala Solidarity Committee here in New York during the very difficult years of Guatemala that were so tragic. But I do remember one thing that I wanted to point out to Giancarlos, and that is that one of the demonstrations that I remember was the largest in Guatemala that I knew of was when the miners from San Juan Ixtabacan marched down to the city, and it took them 7 days to do that, 7 days and 7 nights. And along the way, they gathered support from all of the communities along the way. And then when they gathered in Guatemala City, it was like 300,000 people. And for a country the size of Guatemala at that time, that was a lot of people. And there is film footage of that. So that was one thing that I wanted to say, that these mining operations are difficult, and you know, it's difficult to struggle against the working conditions in them, and then the destruction of the environment, which, you know, I wanted to ask a very specific question to Giancarlos, because here, for example, if you have a piece of property in Texas that has oil on it, and a company wants to extract the oil, I mean, you get certain rights. You have certain rights over your property, and you're going to get a certain amount of profit from that extraction. And how is it that these companies can come in and just take over acres and acres, or hectares and hectares of land in Guatemala? Whose land is it? Who does it belong to? Is it communal land, or is the government taking away private property from people to let the mining companies come in? And I know that, you know, this is not the only mining concession, that there are hundreds more that are in the works, and it just seems like it's destroying the environment in Guatemala.
¿Entiendes la pregunta? Sí, sobre las propiedades. Ajá, cómo es que logran tener acceso a la propiedad y por qué pueden tener derechos mineros de exploración sobre un montón de terreno.
La verdad que ellos siempre han llegado con engaño cuando llegan con un interés de comprar una propiedad en una comunidad.
The companies always come in with lies and trickery when they want to buy up land in a community.
Entonces, ellos el dueño del terreno, pues sabemos de que sí tiene legalmente sus documentos, pero el subsuelo es lo que garantiza que es propiedad del Estado.
So a person may have legal title to their land and they know what the boundaries are, but the government owns the subsoil. Is that a word?
Entonces, eso les da como derecho al gobierno de turno poder otorgar ese tipo de licencias, aunque no sea con el consentimiento de los verdaderos propietarios.
So that's what gives the governments the capacity to grant mining license without the consent of the population.
Y es por eso que se ha trabajado mucho en informar también a los propietarios de los terrenos para que no vendan sus propiedades.
That's why we've done a lot of work in teaching people about the importance of not selling their land.
Porque puedan tener el derecho de tener licencias de concesión o de exploración, pero si nadie les vende, entonces eso es fundamental para poder evitar de que ellos se apropien de las propiedades.
So the company can have a reconnaissance license or an exploration license, but if people don't sell their land, then they have no way to come in and move toward exploitation.
So I just wanted to add also, here in New York, we have similar struggles against big companies who want to come in and frack for natural gas. And yeah, we've had a big struggle against that. And it's similar in the struggles that you have, but we don't face the kind of repression that you do. And so I'm so happy to see Florecerá, Guatemala, and the whole popular movement, you know, as a source of protection for the kind of resistance that you're putting to these mining companies and the environmental concerns. So thank you all for your work.
Thank you so much. Tell us your name.
My name
please.
is Carl. Carl Nicolas. Does that make me Hispanic? It's Nicolas. Yeah, I keep listening here about a lot of oppression. Not only on legal terms, in terms of appropriation of the ground, the fields, whatever people own, but also military operation. As you keep saying, the war is still going on, and you talk about the victimization of the people, killing the community leaders, and you just brought up that one candidate has the military behind them. The one candidate has the military behind him, right?
Right.
Okay, and also the other candidate is linked to powerful criminal figures. So that's a lot of oppression, and I understand you guys are organizing and everything, but it seems to me that there is more oppression and it's going, and I'm wondering how you guys are planning to defend yourself, because when you brought up the issue here of the armed struggle, I do understand all your reserve toward military activism, guerrilla activism and stuff like that. I understand that. But there should be consideration of other ways to fight back. Because if you're not fighting back, you're being victimized. And let's look at some other alternatives. I mean, if you're gonna do nonviolence, you gotta do nonviolence as the Gandhi way, the Martin Luther King way, something aggressive, nonviolence resistance, civil disobedience. If they're gonna kill you, you gotta make them kill you in public.
Okay, so your point and your question.
Let me finish it. I'm about to finish.
Okay, you're gonna get to the
I'm
question.
wrapping it. So my question is the issue of the people, the company buying the fields, and sometimes people are poor and they need the money. Just telling them not to sell sometimes might not work if they find themselves in a situation where they really need money. So there should be. My question is, what are the ways you guys are organizing to really fight back as the oppression oppression is mounting, how you fight back economically and military in a civil disobedience way, I don't know, whatever.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, this is an example. These two big movements are an example of civil disobedience. The struggles and also this Renuncia Ya movement, it's an example of how to fight back. We are fighting back. It's just that we are choosing the nonviolent way. I'm here to talk about Florecerás Guatemala, which is the movement in New York. We are in a very privileged situation because we are facing this from the outside and we don't have that, we're not being threatened directly, but we have other struggles. Like inside of our group, we have migration issues. I mean, there are so many struggles that we're fighting against. And that's the point. We want to fight all that, but through a peaceful way. And in Guatemala, as far as I know, they have been being careful of the consequences of participating. The people who are participating, they are very aware that it's dangerous and that they have to be like some strategies to take care of themselves. But arming the people is just not an option. Yeah.
No, but your question is really about civil disobedience.
Yeah, and
I think your question implies that that peaceful resistance is not pacifism, that there's other creative ways within civil disobedience to resist. And maybe right? And maybe Giancarlos can speak to that.
A little bit more than that, because if you just sitting here like what they call a sitting duck,
Right.
and then you getting killed and you calling yourself non-pacifist, then you have an issue. And also,
How do you prevent yourself from being victimized?
economic warfare too. If they bind them and because people are poor, are you guys organizing to support what's going on? Otherwise, they're attacking
Right.
you with money, they're attacking you with guns, they're attacking you with...
So let's give Giancarlos a moment to respond to that, because he's on the ground.
Sí, yo creo que nuestra resistencia de alguna manera sí ha tenido un efecto positivo también para el pueblo.
So we think that our resistance has had a positive impact for people.
Porque hemos visto de que ya no siguieron ellos avanzando en los territorios en los cuales ellos tienen más interés de poder llegar y extraer los minerales.
So we know we've been successful because the company hasn't been able to expand. They have exploration licenses that they're interested in, but they haven't been able to move into those territories.
Creemos de que si no tuviéramos la resistencia, pues ellos ya hubieran avanzado, no sabemos cuánto más, ¿verdad?
So if we didn't have our resistance, they would be who knows where. They would have advanced who knows how far.
Y la verdad que en cuanto a la seguridad, pues ese es un tema bien difícil.
So in the theme of security, this is a difficult theme.
Porque cada uno tenemos que ver y que también tomar nuestras medidas de precaución.
Each of us needs to analyze and to take our own security measures.
Porque no tomamos armas, pero de alguna manera también tenemos que protegernos, tenemos que ver de qué manera como comunidad nos mantenemos organizados y cuidarnos uno con otro también.
And so we're not armed, but we as a community have to see how we support each other and how we take care of each other.
You know, before the evening is over, too, I want to ask you, Ellen, because I know everyone here wants to know how we can contribute to these efforts in Guatemala. And NISQUA has a plan for doing that and for all of us to continue participating.
So just to follow up on the issue of security and what Giancarlos was talking about, one of the fundamental things that NISQUA does is recruit, train, and place human rights accompagners or human rights observers who are essentially volunteers who work in Guatemala side by side with communities and leaders like Giancarlos, like Coidena, who receive threats and intimidation because of their work. And so the theory and the tool that we use is to provide a physical dissuasive presence, that the physical act of someone from outside of Guatemala, side by side someone, the outside eyes, provides people a measure of security. It increases the political risk of doing something to them. And this is something that NISCUA and other organizations have been doing in Guatemala for more than a decade. And it's something that continues to work. And and we know that it works because people continue to ask for it. There's more requests for accompaniment in Guatemala than we can respond to. And so we are currently accepting applications to be an accompanier with NISCUA for a training that starts in January of 2016. There's a brochure and flyers on the back table. You're welcome. Please talk to me if you'd like more information about that. And also just to shift gears and talk specifically about Tahoe resources and specifically about this tour. One of the major goals of this tour, which started in Reno, Nevada and is ending on Monday in Boston, is to really name and shame Tahoe. Most people think of extractive companies or mining companies as Canadian, and it's true. A lot of them operating in Central America, Mexico, and South America, and all over the world are Canadian. But in the case of Tahoe Resources, it's also from here in the United States. And so we feel like it's important to make sure that our elected representatives know that, and make sure that they know that Tahoe is contributing to human rights violations in Guatemala. And so what we're asking you to do is to call or to email your representatives. There's on the back table, there's a half-pager that looks like this that has a script, and also a website where you can find out how to contact your representatives if you don't know. And when we go back to Guatemala, NISCUA and COIDENA are going to meet with the embassy, and hopefully we'll have had lots and lots of people who called, and as a result, your representatives contacted the State Department, contacted the embassy, and we know that this sort of pressure from up here has an impact. The people we meet with at the embassy, if they've received phone calls about Tahoe Resources, come to the meeting prepared. They come with answers to our questions, and we know that we have a lot more sort of political force, political power in that meeting when we have your support. So that's the first thing. If you flip over the sheet, there's a couple of other things that are in that sort of same line of idea. To join our Thunderclap, which is a social media tool to send a coordinated message. You can sign up to do that on Facebook or on Twitter. Explanation of what Thunderclap is, if you don't know, is also on the back of the sheet. And then finally, before you go today, we ask that you take a photo. With us, we have printed out some photos that say, Seguimos con ustedes, still here with you. Which is a message that we want to take back to the thousands of other people who are involved in the resistance to Tahoe Resources, who are members of COIDENA communities, to demonstrate that there are people here in the United States who know what's going on and who are in solidarity with them in their struggle.
Do we have pictures of the leaders of those companies?
Not here, but you can Google them.
Well, we would like to,
Sure.
put them on social media so we can.
Okay.
Good idea.
Oh, great. Okay, so thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you, Giancarlos, and thank you, Gabriela. And thank you all for coming tonight. You had one other comment, Nancy? An announcement. More activism. Of course.
Tomorrow we have an event with Giancarlos as well, and Gabriela. I invite you to come. It's at St. Columba Church, which is a small church on 25th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. And it starts at 7 o'clock. And it's in the downstairs meeting room of the rectory, so it's not in the church itself. So you're all invited. And, if you can't come, tell other people about Giancarlos. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to make a last brief announcement, which is that NISCUA actually does also have fundraising activities, and that it would be great, anyone who would like to buy a number of products that they sell to fundraise, if they speak to the organizers here tonight about how they can purchase these things.
Mejor que yo la realidad. Es una ciudad, todo el mundo en la vida. Entonces eso se dificulta. Hacia comunicación. Eso es fundamental. Una buena organización, hacer algo sólido y que cada día vaya sumando. Por supuesto que se empieza un poquito más. Cada vez se van sumando más personas, pero sí, aquí sí lo veo, sobre todo porque hay gente de diferentes problemas también en el país de origen. Aquí vienen ocupados de trabajar. Está ilegal. Viene a pensar y lo hace. Ajá. Pero mientras el miedo esté, eso es lo que necesitamos hacer. Y eso pasa ellos se manifestaron. Ah, no, la iglesia es para concientizar, para sensibilizar más que todo, ¿verdad? Ajá, y para, de alguna manera, motivar a expresar su descontento, pero siempre dentro del club pacífico. O sea, sin violentar. La iglesia no es para eso, es para concientizar, para sensibilizar, para hacer ver y decir la verdad.
You're going to come tomorrow night or not?
Sensibiliza en cuanto a eso y que seamos partícipes en luchar para cuidar nuestros recursos naturales. La dicha de tener lagos, tener ríos, y que aún todavía no están
Yeah, so they're going to be gone.
descuido un poquito. Entonces, pero aquí es muy importante porque es un país que se caracteriza por la ley. Entonces,
5 women.
pero al menos tiene ese proceso, al menos allá se ve. Entonces eso, y allá que beneficio hay. Los machos que son pero eso fue así muy importante, porque allá se sonó esa entonces eso nos sirve para seguir sensibilizando.
He did mention.
Tal vez simbólico, pero por lo menos. Pues ahí estamos. Cuesta, ¿verdad? Cuesta porque
Yeah, because I mean, part of it is what happens here, but part of it is also a lot of it is what can happen afterwards. So if there's a lot of things that are actually
So tell me.
I mean, they have a computer.
Just be against the wall.
Ah, de verdad. Ah, qué bueno. Me alegro. Ah, gracias. Ah,
¿Ustedes de Guatemala?
sí, sí.
All right. I'll
No,
find
Lengua
out.
es una organización de acá. Acompaña allá. Acompaña. Para acá. Ajá. O sea, coordinación.
La primera es
Al llegar yo entonces ya al compartir los ¿pero dónde te la pasas más? ¿Aquí o allá?
allá.
Allá. ¿De qué parte? Ah, en la mera capital. Ah, sí. No, nosotros estamos para el área de Santa Rosa. Ajá. Ellos nos hacen un acompañamiento de solidaridad. ¿Está bien? ¿Está bien? Ajá, está bien. Vamos a ver qué
started going down and in part sort of to kind of establish a relationship, but I started going down and studying Spanish, but had a professor at the college who spends a lot of time there doing oral history.
Así sí me gusta porque hay una comunidad aquí, ¿no? Y que de guatemaltecos. Yo soy de College Point, que es en Queens, y hay una grande población de guatemaltecos, y son bien religiosos, pero atrás de eso también que pueden usar su religión como una avenida para resistencia en diferentes lugares. Por ejemplo, ellos quieren hacer una misa en enero para los señores que creo que tu proyecto, o sea, a través de la religión también incluye a mucha más gente católico.
So I brought delegations to that. Catolicismo continues to partner organizations there. So, and then I've been doing more domestic work in Spanish. So now I do like freelance communication
Like what?
Sí, pero tampoco es siempre y cuando se vaya a cumplir los objetivos. Sí, siempre y cuando. Sí,
I wasn't there. No, yeah, it's all my fault. No. So they just recently phased it out. I'm still close friends with the person who's the program officer for that project. And I was there when we ramped it up because the conditions then has something to do with Okay, thank you. Great to meet you. So we got a huge grant.
Tengo un primo donde vive en Suecia. Nosotros somos de Guatemala.
Novo, N-O-V-O, which is bucket. His son and his wife, and then they work with it. But we never had a lot of fun. This is going to be one of their priority issues. So they fund and start to identify.
Oh, sí. También abajo. Oh, sí, oh.
Yeah. So now, but now it's transitioned out.
Mi papá ha nacido en Guatemala y ya lo viví Pues es un poco complicado, ¿no? Porque ciudades que son bien complejas. Yo viví más de 5 años y por la escuela no he regresado. Pero ahora sí tienen los papeles y todo, ¿saben? Sí. Pero
vaya, se cuida.
De verdad que usted es muy buen orador.
It's amazing to me.
O sea,
It's amazing to me that we can see these pictures, you know?
que he vivido en Guatemala 40 años. Hace 40 años. Hasta que llegué.
Because in prior times, nobody wanted to show their face.
I know.
Querer qué bueno que hicieron.
These people are kind of in the mentality like screw them, kind of of the like we're not gonna hide. We're just gonna put it all out there.
That's good. Good.
Yeah. You wanna do your
Angie.
Would you like to do a photo?
Oh, it's just me.
Yeah, sure.
fue un placer. Mañana nos decimos la idea, vamos a presentar mañana.
That's a great idea.
Did you give it to everybody?
So they are 1,000 issues.
Oh, Brooklyn, but she's got to relocate. I don't even know how things are. Yeah, yeah. We spoke about it.
no. Oh, there's this. Great. I mean, she could, you could give her a microphone and, she's comfortable with it. Yeah, yeah. Right. Right. Oh, he wasn't using a lot of rhetoric. It's funny. I learned a lot. Asked a question about, was it him? Oh no, it was the Filipino about the revolutionary groups. Because when we were active, in the 70s, like it was a big deal. Which group did you like? Which was your favorite? These are the guerrilla groups. And, they didn't win much. If you look at Colombia, they just went the Colombia race. How long did they struggle? Maybe they had just, causes in the beginning, but after a while, where are you going with it? It's just, people are dying, and the military has more stuff. They have more tanks and planes, and yeah. Yeah.
So and like they were saying, it's just hard because they get thrown. Like when I saw I still want to find the pictures that they were shackled.
Oh yeah.
Or they were handcuffed. This is what happens. It's like, okay, what are you going to do? So that's the you kind of just go listen, whatever happens, happens, and you kind of resign yourself to possibly being killed. But it's such a two-way sword, so possibly.
Pero sí hay formas, sí, son reales de hacer presión desde fuera hacia adentro para que esto funcione.
Happy and so
Although there is a drone taking pictures of me every night, he's out there.
But wait, it's funny because when you said that, I'm like, you Guatemala? I didn't know that, obviously.
That I was in Guatemala?
Did you live there? Did you live there? Or?
Well, I lived there a short time, several months. I got sick down there, so.
And what was your point?
Well, it was before I found a career. My parents were really giving me a hard time, pushing me. So my parents said that they would pay for me to go to Mexico to get my Spanish good enough to be a teacher or something.
Okay.
So it was a school. So it was a school in Mexico, near Mexico City, and I went to Cuernavaca, and but I had, when I got out of college, I was a teacher. I was teaching English as a second language, and I was teaching the high school equivalency in Spanish. So
how did you learn Spanish?
From Vives. It started with Vives, but then it went, yeah.
Oh, so you learned from there?
Well, no, I mean, I learned it a little bit in school, but once you hear it all the time, I mean, I really learned it by this Guatemala committee, because we had meetings, we called each other. I'm lucky, because I went to Mexico to study Spanish. I didn't know how to speak. And then there was the earthquake happened. So I had a boyfriend from Guatemala.
Girlfriend. I love that. Oh my God. So how did you meet her?
She was one of my students. But we didn't get started until after he left. So was I.
Oh, good, okay.
No, we were both in our 20s. So, let me take this. So I was there, and not far from this, and we were seeing terrible headlines in the paper about dogs eating, bodies and everything, and I volunteered here and there, but then he said, come to the border and we'll pick you up and you come in and maybe you can help do something, So that's what I did when I stayed down there.
Where's the boyfriend?
Well, as happened, it was a couple of weeks before. I mean, actually, I was living in his parents' house with him, but you know, he started getting very domineering, you know, like the macho thing, you know, and I wasn't used to that.
I don't blame you. You should never be used to that. I mean, oh, wow. So then you got so comfortable too.
So I left Guatemala City to travel, to see a little bit. So I got on a bus and I looked at a map, and the biggest city after the Guatemala City was called Progreso. And I said to the driver, "Can I go to Progreso?" He said, "Sure." So he drives for a couple of hours. He gets to this point in the road, he stops. There's nothing there. There's trees, there's nothing, there's not a building, nothing. Progreso. Now I'm on my own. So he said, "Here it is, Progreso, get out."
Through the map,
yeah, out. So I got out, and there was a little road, so I started walking. And then all of a sudden, I
the
see.
thing you do when you're younger, right?
Yeah.
It's like you think back and go, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
That is such an interesting story. So then you decided.
So I started.
Somebody was doing the day at least.
What? It was during the day, yeah. So I started
grew up
walking.
with that.
I started walking, and all of a sudden I see these giant men, blonde. Giant men, blonde men, American, and they were Mennonites. And Mennonites live in Belize, you know, next door, the next country. So they had come to help, and they were building houses.
Oh, wow.
So I said, "Hi, you know, I'm looking to volunteer, whatever." And they said, "Okay, you can come and help us, and you'll be painting red crosses on every house. You know, that's what you're going to be doing."
Oh, look, I love it. She like does this, and it's like she needs this money. Next thing you know, you're thinking about clothes, and you're like, okay, I don't know what.
But that's how I got sick. One day I worked without a hat, and I got like something, and then I was really sick. So I was staying I went to stay in this church, and they had like a cot that was probably for torturing people. It was rope, you know, it was rope. It was so uncomfortable. So I would sleep there, and then in the morning I would crawl out to where the bus stop is, and the bus wouldn't come, so I would crawl back to the bed and try the next day. So that's how I got sick.
And how long did you do that?
Well,
Until the
eventually I
bus
got,
came.
eventually I got back to my friend's parents' house. And you know, in countries like Guatemala, they have a lot of ladies who give injections. You know, they have these signs on their, they paint on their door. "We give se hacen inyecciones," something like that.
For what?
So they were giving me injections for my fever. I had very high fever. And finally they called a doctor because I wasn't getting better. And the doctor gave me a suppository. And next day I was 100%.
And you got it all out?
Yeah.
Wow, you could have done it.
Yeah.
That's like amazing. You should write a book, like about you. Seriously, 'cause there's so many things I've learned about you in like the 20 minutes from Berkeley to New York and then now. I'm like, what?
And more to come. Stay tuned.
You should. I would love to read that memoir.
This is Lyn's story. She lived in Guatemala a long time.
Did you guys meet up in Guatemala?
In
Is that where you
the
met?
committee here.
Here?
Yeah, the Guatemala.
You were there at different times?
Well, we joined at overlapping times, and then I left and she stayed, and then she became more involved. She's very involved with church issues and human rights and a lot of great things, you know. I always tell her, "Call me, you know, let me help you, let me do something."
Or, you know, be like,
That's really
you know, child abuse, yeah, and then it's
That is like amazing. Yeah, I guess I have been active at heart, but I just really haven't found. Like, I don't know, I think I'm too urbanized, you know? It's just one of those things where.
I think we're all separated now, you know, except for social media.
Oh no, we're not kicking you out. You can stay. That's not my job. So.
Because I used to be involved. It's it's just, I guess because I'm not feeling very well. Even now, like, I can't even talk very well because my throat's
It happened.
and I'm in a lot of pain, and I'm trying to kind of like rise above it. So that's done me a disservice. But like you, when you said, you know, my thing is like, yeah, let's go. You know, so I'm always up to something, but I haven't taken the initiative myself lately to do so. But if I, you know, but and then I guess. Oh, okay.
Don't wrap it up.
No.
I told you.
One of these days I mostly
No.
get for
You probably don't need that.
for Africa stuff.
I know. I wrote it on the paper.
I care about a lot of things all over the world.
This is an extra wire. It's gonna be out here.
Okay.
I mean, your story is very intricate.
I also did a newsletter in
I told this to John C.
Really?
I started it up and wrote a lot of news things and, yeah.
Is that the only, well, probably not. Is that the only country?
They can put it on the table.
Latin America.
Really?
Yeah, I went to
They offer jobs, but that isn't really what happens.
Podemos ver el municipio de San Rafael Las Flores, donde está ahorita explotando la minería Tajo, allá en San Rafael Las Flores, que no se ve ningún desarrollo.
So we have the example of the municipality of San Rafael Las Flores, where the mine is actually located and where it's been operating, and we don't see any development there.
Ante todo ello, pues nosotros como pueblo también hemos reaccionado para poder manifestar pacíficamente, ya que es un derecho constitucional también y por lo tanto tenemos el derecho de la libertad de poder ejercerlo.
And so given all of these concerns, we've organized and carried out peaceful protests, and we know that we have the right, based on the Constitution, to free expression.
Acá podemos ver a señoras, niños, jóvenes, señores que participan para defender nuestro territorio, ya que es una gran preocupación porque en nuestras manos está hoy poder heredar un mejor futuro también a nuestras futuras generaciones.
You can see in the photo that men, women, youth are all participating, and this is because people know that they have a huge responsibility in their hands right now in order to pass down to their children a better future.
La presencia de la policía en ese momento pues es para reprimir la presencia al pueblo y de esa manera poder meter intimidación, poner miedo en la mente de las personas.
So the presence of the police, for example, at these protests is in order to repress people, to intimidate them and to make them afraid.
El pueblo pues no se ha detenido. Y en muchos de nuestros municipios se han organizado consultas municipales de vecinos que están fundamentadas en el artículo 64 del Código Municipal.
But people haven't given up, and in many municipalities they've organized municipal referendum or municipal consultations, which is legally based on.
stories.